To order. This is the regular meeting of the City Council of the City of Cottonwood, Arizona, to be held February 20th, 2018 at 6 p.m. City Clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Althouse.
Here.
Councilmember Henry.
Here.
Councilmember Howdigy.
Here.
Councilmember Norman.
Here.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Allen.
Here.
Mayor Alinsky.
Here, thank you. Please stand and join me in the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next is a brief summary of current events by Mayor, City Council, and/or City Manager. The public body does not propose, discuss, deliberate, or take legal action on any matter brought up during the summary unless the specific matter is properly noticed for legal action. Any council members have anything to report? Yes, please.
If you want to touch on this as well, I don't know. We attended the Verde Valley Property Owners Association meeting, the mayor, myself, Councilmember Althouse, and with Supervisor Randy Garrison, and did a great job of quelling the rumors, the annexation rumors, and I have to give a kudos out to all the attendees that were very gracious. There wasn't any difficulties. They're very polite, and they asked some amazingly good questions. There wasn't any head bumping or anything, so that was a really good meeting, and I appreciate how well you did there, Mayor. Attended Colt Grill's one-year anniversary right down the road here. They've managed to stay in business for a year in our Old Town area. We're absolutely thrilled. It's a great restaurant. I attended the monthly Mingus Mountain Republican Luncheon with some excellent speakers. They had Judd Simmons, who was the Yavapai County Assessor in his first year in office, and I wanted to mention that because they have some programs when it comes to property tax. They talked a little bit about how they value them, but there are programs like a senior property valuation protection and the widower exemption for those of you that own your houses and your seniors or widow or widower. They have some things that you can do to reduce those taxes or hold them at the current tax level. So contact the assessor's office if you're interested. I never knew all that. Also, they had Chris Oditz, a radio personality who was there, very entertaining but very knowledgeable individual. And then last, I attended the Verde Valley Leadership Open Your Heart to Youth fundraiser last Friday. That's a fundraiser specifically for scholarships for our teens that are getting ready to move into high school, and I guess they made about $1,000 at that, had over 60 people in attendance. It was a great and a fun event, so kudos to them as well.
Very good. Any other council members? No? City Manager, do you have anything to report?
Just something real quick that was in the management report, actually, but I'll make this announcement for the public as well. The Cottonwood Public Library will be hosting a free public health screening presented by Northern Arizona Healthcare tomorrow, February 21st, from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. So if you want to get your health screened, it's a great opportunity. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Very good, thank you. Up next, we have presentations. We have Dr. James Perry here from Yavapai College for a community update. Thanks for being here tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here again. As I always like to start off my presentations, kind of the mission of Yavapai College and what we do. Provide quality, higher learning, and cultural resources for the diverse populations of Yavapai County, which is a very large county, 8,000 square miles, and very rural. First goal, or board ends, is really to focus on education, our primary function within the college itself. We do this through a variety of areas, one being basic or adult basic education, dual credit, developmental education, which also pairs with remedial education, as we've got a lot of people who will stop out or go into the workforce for a number of years, and then for whatever reason may decide to retool and come back to us. We offer classes to try to get them up to where they need to be successful. Transfer, of course, to the universities, specifically here in Arizona, but also to other universities as we have articulation agreements with. Second to last, career technical education. and then continuing education. Goal two for the board and Yavapai College is economic development. A number of years ago, under President Penny Wills, she formed what we call the Regional Economic Development Center, which is made up of individuals that will do a number of various things, but really to take a look at economic development within our communities and help drive that, to build economic development within Yavapai County. Under that also is SBDC. So some of the work that REDC does is really economic impact analysis. A lot of the work that they do as well helps us as we look at the data to figure out what other types of programs or services should the college be offering within our service area. And of course, academics is trying to pair those economic drivers within the county itself with programs that we have or programs that we really need to look at in order to meet that need. The third is cultural enrichment. Classes, we're really looking at blending the credit and the non-credit at Yavapai College. And then part of the reason is we're seeing the continued growth in that older demographic. And we're seeing families and that other demographic relocate to the urban areas. So when you've got a proponent of the population is that older population, they don't necessarily want to take the credited classes or the transfer classes. Many of them may have degrees. They're interested in things that are for general enrichment. So we're trying to take a look at a blending of credit and non-credit. And I'll give you an example. For instance, and we make some assumptions here, so I'm not trying to pigeonhole anybody into this. But a retiree, if we've got a ceramics class, may not want to take a full-on 15-week ceramics class. So what we're trying to do is design these mini classes that are part of that 15-week semester, where it may be only one thing or a couple of weeks they want to take it, and then they can leave. But they also have the option to continue on if they want to. So they don't have to, again, commit all of their time to that 15-week semester, but could still learn something from an enrichment standpoint in our accredited classes. The other is art galleries. If you didn't know this, we've got a full-fledged art gallery on the Verde Valley campus. And we have a signature showing every month. And at least once a year, once a semester, we have a student showing as well. Our library on the Verde Valley campus, and really the libraries at Prescott and the Verde Valley campus, compose 20% of the county system. And we work real well with the library consortium to share and address needs and resources as well. And then we also try to offer a variety of community events as well, not only in the pavilion on the Verde Valley campus, but M137, whether it be a speaker series or live music or a number of different things. I will mention that one community event we'll have coming up next fall is the 50th anniversary celebration of Yavapai College. So we'll have events on each of our campuses and sites, and as we get closer to that, I'll make sure I reach out to the mayor and city council for those dates and things that are happening. I also wanted to give you kind of a snapshot of where we are this spring semester. So we know that we serve a variety of different populations. In fact, in community colleges right now, and Yavapai is no different, we're teaching up to 4 different generations in the classroom. So anywhere from 16-year-olds that are taking some credited classes or dual enrollment, all the way up to 90-year-olds, and we probably got a few that are older than that. That creates a very interesting dynamic in the classroom as you look at the periods that various people went through their elementary education, high school education, and even college. A lot has changed since that point in time. From a credit standpoint, we have I checked this the other day, 1,432 unduplicated headcount. All right, so that is strictly for the credit side of the house and what we offer. Everything from math to English to psychology to even our career and technical education classes.
Mr. Perry,
Yes.
is that just in the Verde Valley? The
That is just in the Verde Valley.
Okay, thank you.
That is just in the Verde Valley. And I apologize, but I did not add Sedona into the mix there, which has around 80 students currently enrolled there this semester. On the non-credit side, specifically Osher Lifelong Learning, or what many people refer to as OLLI, 452 unduplicated headcount currently. And we've got Zach Jernigan, formerly of Larson Newspapers, as our new community education coordinator, and he's currently building and registering for community education. On the dual enrollment, most of you understand what this is, but we're able to credential the high school instructor to offer college curriculum while they're taking those high school classes. So we crosswalk that curriculum, but those students are receiving straight transcripted college credit. Interesting enough, this is not unduplicated headcount, but these are enrollments. You can see that Sedona is kind of one that only up until a couple of years ago really started to get into dual enrollment. Interesting enough, what's happening right now is we're starting to see a drop in dual enrollment. And that is not because of interest by the students, but because our accreditation body, the Higher Learning Commission, has put new stringent restrictions on faculty that can teach post-secondary education. Meaning a high school instructor that may have taught for 15 years but only had a bachelor's degree can no longer teach dual enrollment per our accreditation. What it requires is 18 graduate hours or a master's in that actual discipline. All right, and that's nothing we can control. That's the body that sanctions us as a higher learning institute and is tied directly to the feds and federal financial aid. So what we're doing in regards to that is really starting to meet with the superintendents and the principals and talk about a pathway. If you can't deliver it at the high school, how do we remove those barriers so that those students can still continue to get college credit while in high school? I threw this map up there. I know it's difficult to see. What this does, 3 years ago, I led a process of strategic planning for the Verde Valley campus in the Sedona Center to really take a look at what direction did we need to go in. One of the prominent themes there was career and technical education. Prior to my tenure on the Verde Valley campus and here in the Verde Valley, we had a few programs in CTE. As you can see, the Verde Valley currently has visual arts, allied health, animation, computer networking, education, film media, fire science, nursing, sciences, of course, and viticulture and enology. And that's not all of them. We also have, in working with the Valley Academy, the JTED over here, we've also added medical assistant, where those students are actually coming to campus for straight transcripted credit, as well as phlebotomy in that mix, and culinary. You can see culinary and hospitality in Sedona. But what we've been able to do is carve out a morning section from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock where high school and JTED students are actually coming to the Sedona Center to get that culinary curriculum. And in fact, what's happened is we're now starting to look at scheduling for fall of next year and working with the school districts as well, as we think we're going to have to add another section of the culinary to that facility to meet the need. So some of the things that are in the work, well, before I go too far, I want to share a little story with you. So we're very data-driven in what we do at the college. We're looking at economic data, we're looking at enrollment data, we're looking at various different metrics to really make decisions that are in the best interest primarily of our students, but also for the taxpayer as we look at where we're going to spend resources and things like that. So I'm sure many of you have met Dr. Penny Hargrove, the new superintendent at Mingus High School. And I think it was my first or second meeting with her. I had our institutional research pull some graduation data, because we can track where students are going or what colleges they're going to. And I was really excited, right, with this data. So I handed it to her, and what it showed was 165 graduates from Mingus Union High School. She had 165 that went into post-secondary education, and 105 of those went to Yavapai College. Great numbers, right? Her jaw dropped, and I said, well, what's wrong? She said, well, I've got a lot more graduating seniors that didn't do anything this year, that didn't go on to post-secondary education. My point is it's all about reference. Those are good numbers, and we're happy that we captured 105 of that 165. But really the focus now, and it leads me to the first one up there, is pathways. is really looking at not the unicorns, the students that we know are going to go on to four-year universities or even Ivy League schools, because we have some of those. We want them as well, but really focusing on that middle tier student to lower tier student that for whatever reason, high school didn't light their fire. They're smart, they're brilliant. Sometimes what they lack is the confidence. So really building that confidence in them, and I'll tell you, dual enrollment, career technical education, even the academic areas with what we're doing with the high schools is a way to do that, to show them that they can be successful if they choose to go to post-secondary education. And I want to make a note, too, that I've heard people that have even been involved in career and technical education their whole lives try to separate the two, post-secondary education or college and CTE. They're one and the same at Yavapai College. We are a comprehensive community college. Now, if you go to other states, you have a technical system of community colleges, and then you have the academic side, or in many cases, the liberal arts side. Here in Arizona, we are combined, so we offer both. So those students that are involved or in classes in CTE that are articulated or dual enrollment with the college, they're in college. And again, it's making them understand that no matter what you want to do, we can help you be successful. So what we're trying to do now is align pathways. And this drops down even to the junior high level. It's starting to get career exploration and those types of conversations going with students so they can start to think about what their aptitude and what their passion may be in life. So we can set them on the right path. And then based on that, deliver a seamless pathway where if they go into high school, they're taking credits. Maybe they transfer, maybe they don't, but that roll directly into the curriculum we have at Yavapai College as well. Because the ultimate in that is a student graduating with a certificate or an associate's degree the same time, if not before, that they graduate from high school. And in fact, we're going to see 15 students, high school students, graduate with their culinary certificate in May. And those that are juniors that have another year, we're going to roll them into the hospitality side as well. So they'll have 2 certificates by the time they graduate. When it comes to CTE strategic planning, we've been able to develop some programs, especially under new leadership at the JTED and VACTI, and even with the superintendents. But as you know, we've got a turnover. When we're looking at programs, we want to benefit not a specific high school necessarily, but we want to look at the whole Verde Valley. How can we benefit those students? And we know that we've got a change in leadership coming at least 2 of the high schools, at Camp Verde and Sedona, and Dr. Hargrove is brand new. So especially those in the secondary side, you've got almost a complete turnover in 2 years. So what I've asked the superintendents to do, we meet on a monthly basis, is the next meeting we've got in March is to sit down and really talk about CTE in the Verde Valley. There's been lots of talk about centralization of programs, about decentralization of programs. What we've got to do is have a frank discussion of programs and figure out how we move forward. What programs would you centralize? What programs would you keep at specific high schools? What programs are needed for the workforce now? And what programs are needed for the workforce for the future? Some of these are tough conversations because in every school district, and I'll be the first to admit, even within the college, we're very good at starting programs. We're not very good at sunsetting programs when the needs change. And it's getting more and more difficult because of resource challenges to do everything. So we've got to come up with a common vision for the Verde Valley and what it means for opportunities for students. And not just high school students. You know, again, when we say we serve the population, we're talking multiple populations within the Verde Valley. The last one I'll mention is West Mingus Avenue project. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. We've been working with Tom Palmer and the Prescott National Forest Service for a couple of years, just on the concept. I know they were doing a lot of work to get everything approved before they started doing anything. But one of the ideas that came to the table was a trailhead specifically on the Verde Valley campus. And it really makes sense from my aspect, as we've got 80 acres right behind the campus that is actually part of the campus that goes right by our vineyards. into this West Mingus Avenue project. So really about putting in a new trail system on campus that would benefit the community, that would lead right up into the foothills, and then connect to additional trailheads up there. We don't know exactly what that's going to look like, but we've got another meeting coming up on March 7th. As Tom has indicated, he wants that to be the first project that's done as part of this. So we're really looking at some monies we had through the institution that were earmarked for a couple of years from now, pushing that forward so that we can start that project. What it also does is, and many of you have maybe heard me say this before, but one of the other areas we're really looking at from a programmatic standpoint, because I think there's a deep passion for it here in the Verde Valley, and when you talk about the external environment, it makes sense, is really conservation and natural resource. And a project like this becomes work-based learning, which can really add to the curriculum in a variety of areas. At this point, I'd like to open it up for questions, comments.
Are there any questions from council?
I have one. What you were just stating when you were talking about adding it to conservation and natural resources, you're talking about the construction of the trail or the planning of, is that what you're talking about, combining that in there?
Yes, currently we host every year training for NRCS and even for some of the other governmental organizations that do trail maintenance. And we want to start to incorporate a lot more of that stuff into the curriculum. You know, when we start programs, and this is kind of my philosophy, and I come from a CTE background, is students learn by doing, period. You teach the theory and then you go out and you apply it. And again, this becomes another mechanism or modality to teach those hands-on skills.
Thank you.
I'm a little disturbed to hear about the dual enrollment numbers dropping. What's the conversation going on statewide about that?
Statewide, there's really nothing that can be done. Higher Learning Commission dictates what we're able to do and how we're able to credential instructors. Now, interesting enough, we have some flexibility on the career and technical education side. And the reason being is, for instance, you're going to be hard-pressed to find an automotive instructor that has a master's degree in automotive. So we're able to credential on a little different scale, which is years of experience. What it's really focused at is, or it seems to be hindering, is the academic areas, the purely academic areas, where there is ample opportunity for a faculty to get a master's or even a doctorate in that area. The conversations we're having as well, Mary Linsky, and I understand the concern, but again, I think we're looking at alternative ways to deliver that if this is declining, is really trying to work with the districts to say, we understand it's hard, and we understand that to teach secondary or high school, you only need a bachelor's, but it doesn't hurt to look for an instructor that has maybe a master's in that area as well, because they're much more nimble and flexible when it comes to these sorts of things. So they're declining some. I mean, it's not a massive decline right now. And in fact, what HLC gave us was a couple of year extension with those faculty to say, hey, we'll go ahead and grandfather you in for 2 years, but you've got to be making satisfactory progress towards those 18 graduate hours or a master's. And then by the end of this date, you either do or you don't.
Got it. Just seems like that's a natural base to move into your college, to increase enrollment at your college. It seems like if you get them hooked early on in high school. Absolutely.
It's interesting because HLC accredits both the universities and the community colleges. And sometimes decisions are made that inadvertently, in a negative way, affect community colleges and not so much universities.
Okay.
But we're working on it.
Great. Any other questions? No. Thanks for coming in
Pleasure
tonight.
to be
Appreciate it. Okay, up next is call to the public, and this portion of the agenda is set aside for the public to address the council regarding an item that is not listed on the agenda for discussion. Are there any folks here tonight that would like to address the council? Okay. We'll close the floor and move on to the consent agenda. We have 3 items tonight on the consent agenda. The following items are considered to be routine and non-controversial by the council. It will be approved by one motion. So I'll go ahead and read them out for the public. We have item number 1, acceptance of rights-of-way and easements for the future connection of Thousand Trails Road to Corey Drive. Number 2 is extension of the weed eradication contract with Verde Valley Weed Control. And number 3 is proposed scope of work and estimated fee from Clear Creek Associates for the Riverfront Water Reclamation Facility Aquifer Protection Permit Modification and Fairgrounds/Kids Park Injection Well Underground Storage Facility/Water Storage Permitting Process. Any member of the council like to have an item pulled? No member of the public like to have an item pulled? Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Norman made the motion and Councilmember Pfeiffer seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion's approved. And we move on then to new business. Item 1 is infrastructure and assurance agreement with Virtual Reality Enterprises for the development of Phase 1, Unit 3 of the Mesquite Hills subdivision.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'm going to step down. I have a conflict.
Okay, thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. First of all, I'd like to apologize. I apologize if I look a little stiff. I hurt my neck this weekend. I just got out of a chiropractor appointment, so no, won't be doing any rubbernecking tonight.
You did what with your neck?
I don't know what I did, but
Oh, okay.
I know it hurts.
Okay.
That's about it. So the first item in front of you tonight is the development agreement for the Mesquite Hills subdivision. As many of you know, and I'll show you where this image is in just a minute. Excuse me. This project's technically already been approved, but it was after it was approved, broken into 3 separate phases. They've completed Phase 1. They've completed all the infrastructure for Phase 2, and they're working on building all the houses for Phase 2. So they would like to begin starting the infrastructure for Phase 3. Now, as you can see on this map, this is Mingus Avenue right here. You've got Cottonwood Ranch right here. So this is, in fact, they're all technically Phase 1. So these all 3 are Phase 1. This is Phase 1, Unit 1. Phase 1, Unit 2, which again, the infrastructure is complete, and I think they're approximately 50% done with the houses in that phase. And then here's Unit 3, and Unit 3 is the area that will actually connect through to Cottonwood Ranch. So we'll connect through. It's not a collector street collecting through. We do have a future collector street moving through here, Mesquite Hills Drive, that will someday connect through the college over to Black Hills Drive, and again on south to Fur and 260. So they are building that collector street as part of this phase. They're extending it up to Prospect Drive. This development agreement does not require them to extend it all the way to the end of the project. We did reserve within the agreement the ability for the council or a future council to have them build that portion perhaps with a future phase. But it's not really a good idea to build asphalt and then not drive on it and not use it for an extended amount of time, since they don't know when a future phase is going to happen. Staff is okay with that. Just a small portion here not being built at this time. Also, in exchange for that small portion of the road not being built at this time, and again, you can see it wouldn't access anywhere. In exchange for that not being built at this time, they're actually giving us a small piece of right-of-way here, and they're building a secondary trail. As part of this, they're building one trail all the way from the east to the west. They'll also build a secondary trail. So as part of this phase, they will build 2 trails. You just heard Dean Perry talk about they want to do a trailhead right up here as part of on Yavapai College, which would be great. It could connect up to both of these, and someday, as council knows, we're working on the trail to connect all the way down to Old Town. Many members of the council may remember a few years ago we were struggling with water pressure at Cottonwood Ranch, and we wanted to get that water line over from the Mesquite Hills development. Of course, the developer was not ready to move forward at that time, so the city actually contracted with them, came up with an agreement, and the city paid to have that line installed. So the water line through this area is actually in place today. The agreement stated that when they got ready to go forward with Unit 3, they would reimburse the city for the cost that they would have had to build anyways. Those costs were about $171,000, and they have reimbursed the city for that. So we've already received that check. Mr. Millar is here if you have any questions. He's the contractor for this project. Any questions?
Any questions for staff at this time? Yes.
My only question is do we have any kind of, and I know this is grit out your crystal ball for us, kind of what we're looking at when it comes to those trails? Do we have any kind of timeline?
Well, for these trails here, they'll actually be one of the first things to go in
Sweet.
as part of infrastructure. So they'll be about 6 feet wide, 2-inch crushed granite, and they'll extend all the way from the east property line to the west property line. So they'll be being constructed at the same time as the roads, the sewer, and all the other infrastructure.
Cool. Thank you.
They do have to have them complete before the first house is built in this phase.
Great.
Councilmember Althouse, did you have a question?
I have a question, and only because I'm being asked by everybody I run into. When will Desperado go through? Do you know when?
Mr. Millar, would you like to talk about your
End of July?
by the
Okay.
end of this July?
Thank you. I keep saying, I don't know, but I'll ask.
And you can start to see the dirt work
You
start to
can
move
see
in the
it, and
near future. Yep.
Most people know I live up in Cottonwood Ranch, so I get asked a lot, when is the road going to go through?
And would you just show us where Desperado is on that?
Thank you. Yes, so this is Mesquite Hills Drive. This is the collector. It's a big 80-foot wide right-of-way.
Mhm.
Then here is, I believe it's Prospect Trail. I apologize, I don't remember the name
Go
of it.
up, right there.
And then this
That's
is Desperado. So
Got
this is
it.
Desperado in Cottonwood Ranch. This is Desperado within the
And
proposed
it-
development.
Guardrail ends in
Right.
Cottonwood Ranch, and you can tell that it's going to continue into Mesquite,
Mhm.
but it's,
Not done, yeah.
it's not there.
Okay. And then the property line on the west side there, what's the property to the west of this?
This is National Forest.
It is National Forest,
And
okay.
then this is Yavapai College.
But that road is proposed to go through and connect to Black Hills Drive?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's not budgeted. It is in our master plan, but it's not happening anytime soon.
Okay. 5 years, 10 years?
It could be as far as 10 years.
Okay.
This portion obviously is being built by a private company.
Mhm.
This portion connecting to FER is all private property, so that will very likely be built by private development. This would probably have to be a public project, probably, and I would assume a joint project between Cottonwood and Clarkdale, if that's something the council wanted to discuss.
Got it. Okay. And but it's National Forest, so it's federal land, right?
That's correct. We would have to get an easement through there from the National
Okay,
Forest.
got it. Any other questions for staff or for the developer tonight? No? Okay. Then I would move to approve the proposed First Amendment to the amended and restated development and assurance agreement with Virtual Real, is it Reality or Realty? Because this is
Realty?
Realty, okay. It was stated Reality, wasn't it on the?
Yeah, virtual
Yeah,
reality.
okay.
Cool.
Which threw me off a little bit. Expecting a different presentation. Anyway, so I'll move to approve the proposed First Amendment to the amended and restated development insurance agreement with Virtual Realty Enterprises LLC for the Mesquite Hills subdivision for the development of Phase 1, Unit 3 of the project, subject to approval of the final plans by the city engineer and the final form of agreement by the city attorney.
Second.
Okay, Mayor made the motion and Councilmember Henry seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. All right, up next is Transfer Station Operations Services and Lease Agreement with Patriot Disposal.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, so some good news. As you all know, we've discussed the transfer station several times, and finally, some good news. There is a company who is interested in coming in and running this at no cost to the city. They would like to be open 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday. They'd like to be open 5 days a week, Tuesday through Saturday, 7:30 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. They will be accepting everything that we accepted, in addition to a few more items. The one item they did reserve is that they reserve the right to charge whatever they need to charge to survive in their business, as long as they give City of Cottonwood residents a 20% discount. So no matter what they choose to set their prices at, City of Cottonwood residents will get a 20% discount from that price. They will be accepting brush and chipping it on site. They will not be burning on site.
You knew I was going to ask.
We would like to discuss with them once they're all set up and on site, giving us a price to take care of the piles that we have up there today. Other things we're going to do. They are going to do some safety modifications to the site. That could cause the site to be down for somewhere between 2 weeks and 30 days. So what we've negotiated within the agreement is if we need to move them, say, behind the wastewater treatment plant, they will be open for up to 3 days a week during that period. So at a minimum, during that 30-day transition period, we may be only open 3 days a week. So
What sorts of improvements?
Everything from safety rails. They're actually going to remove the compactor. What their plan is, in order to cut costs, instead of having 40-yard roll-offs, they're going to have semi-truck, 18-wheel semi-trucks come in. So they're actually going to raise up the platform a little bit, safety rails, remove the compactor. They're actually going to install a new shed closer to the gate so you can, and they're actually putting in scales.
Yeah.
So they will be measuring by weight, not by volume.
Part of the fun of that was how dangerous it was to go up there. It'd be a shame to have it safer, but that's probably in our best interest.
One other item we did reserve in the agreement is we can, if the council chooses, and we'll bring this back to council at a later date, choose to enter into an agreement with them to do our free dump day at the site during their normal hours. So we'll be bringing that back to the council, and they were okay with that.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure, please.
And I don't remember, and I didn't see it in our packet. What is it costing the city right now to run the transfer station? Approximately, I don't expect an exact.
No problem. It's approximately 10 to 20,000 a year until you start calculating brush. Brush in the past has cost us upwards of 50,000 plus. So 1 year, I believe it was even close to $100,000 a year. So it's close to breaking even until you start calculating brush.
Okay, and so that would be a savings to the city. And then how many employees are we currently employed?
We have one employee up there part-time. They are actually bringing in 2 employees to be up. They will have 2 employees on site at all times. They've discussed, they'll at least interview our employee to see if they can keep it.
You're getting to know me so well. I always anticipate my next question. That's it.
Can you clarify the discount, because you just commented on the 20% packet says minimum 10% discount, so do we have kind of a range there as far as the discount for our residents?
We do, because the packet, what we said is we wanted a minimum 10% discount, open a minimum 4 days a week, but we said anybody who comes in and beats those items, you're going to look better in the scoring criteria. So they came in and they actually offered more.
Okay.
Yep, so we only required 4 days. They're going to be open 5.
And you commented earlier about the free dump days, and I think the agreement said they'll have 2 free dump days. How can we recently voted to spread out the dump days. Is this provider willing to work with us on that range of free dump days that we discussed?
Yes, and the way it's stated right now, it doesn't say they'll hold free dump days. It says we as the city reserve the right to hold free dump days. The reason we wanted that in there is because we advertise this as we won't compete with you. Basically, you can move up to our transfer station, we won't compete with you. But we wanted to reserve the right for this council and for any future council, in case you do want to go back to the 1 free dump day, they acknowledge the fact that they won't see that as competition. But yes, we also reserve the right in there to say a multi-week period where we can, ultimately, it would be the city paying for that. So each person would come in, get a receipt, then they would bill the city for that amount. So it would be free to the citizens.
So we can still implement all of the changes that we discussed at our last meeting, as far as we'll limit the amount of the city investment in the freedom days.
That's correct.
First come, first served basis, et cetera.
We would just have to enter into a separate agreement to spell out all the details of that event.
Okay. Thank you.
Have they given any idea on what their proposed fee schedule would be to make ends meet for them?
Yes.
And can you let us know, too, what we currently are paying?
No problem. So I'll run through this really quickly. So for just loose trash per cubic yard, it is interesting they're saying cubic yard, though they're bringing in scales. $12 as opposed to a non-residence would be $15. Construction debris would be $26. Non-residence $30. Bulky items, I'm not quite sure what that means, but I'm hoping they'll specify that a little bit more in there. But 15 for citizens, 20 non-citizens. Green waste, 26 for citizens, 30 non-citizens. Tires separated from the rim, 40 for citizens, 50 for non-citizens. Batteries, 15. Non-Freon appliances, 15 for citizens. Freon containing appliances that were certified as red tagged and removed, 15 again. And then Freon appliances that do not have the red tag, they're going to charge $65. I think that Freon just gets very expensive to dispose of. And then all large electronics, TVs, monitors, etc., $15. And then recyclables, no charge.
For Cottonwood residents.
Yes, for Cottonwood residents, there's a $5 fee for non-residents for the recyclables.
All right. Any other questions from council on this? No.
Can I make a motion?
Please.
Hold on, let me get back there.
I'll just say I'm pleased that we've got a private company coming in to run
Very
this
interested
center.
I'm there, I could do it if you want.
Would you go ahead?
I move to approve the proposed lease operating agreement with Patriot Disposal to operate the city's transfer station, subject to approval of the final form of agreement by the city attorney.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Althouse made the motion, Vice Mayor Allen seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion is approved. Next is property line issue along the north boundary of the Cottonwood Cemetery.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Morgan Scott again. So we were approached by a resident who recently purchased the property north of the cemetery, and they believe that part of the cemetery, I apologize, that part of the cemetery property was actually well outside of the cemetery fence. We are having a survey completed by a different project. In fact, it was the cemetery lot line adjustment with the Azteca property. Many of you are familiar with that. As part of that survey, we realized that the north fence of the cemetery is actually about 28 feet south of the property line. Not quite sure how that happened, why it's that far off. Just so everyone knows where we're at, here's 14th Street. Riverfront Park is over here. Main Street would be right down here. The rough cut building is right about here, just so everybody knows approximately where we're at. This is the city cemetery over here. You can barely see a yellow line right here, but this is the privately owned cemetery. All of these city facilities back here are technically not on city property, and we're going to bring these facilities to you at a different date. But today we're discussing this property line back here. This fence is approximately 28 feet south of this property line. When did this happen? Although we don't know when the fence went in, we know this building here was constructed in 1984, and this structure here was constructed in 1972. There's also a few, for instance, horse corrals and sheds that appear to be on city property. So again, outside the fence, no one's known about it for quite a long time, but technically there are private structures located on the city property outside the fence.
Can you point out what's city-owned and what's private?
Thank you, yes. So it's tough to see. There's some yellow lines right here. This yellow line is the outline of the city cemetery. So this is the north property line. Approximately right here is the fence, and this 28 feet right here is technically today city-owned property outside of the fence and has been occupied by a private property owner for some time. We wanted to bring this to the council to see what direction you'd like to go with this. I believe the property owner here is, she is here today. If you have any questions for her, in fact, she has a few pictures for you. Our question is, do you want to dispose of it? Do you want to keep it? If you'd like to dispose of it, how would we like to go about doing that?
So the properties that are inside that are fully inside of, those are city properties, and if you wouldn't mind just pointing out what
This property.
I'm sorry, the structures themselves.
So technically, this is on a property that's owned by a group called Azteca. That group technically doesn't legally exist. It was kind of a loosely bound group that we're dealing with the unclear title of that issue right now. But I'm sorry, roundabout answer to your question, yes, these city structures are not on the city cemetery property.
And what are they?
That has nothing to do with the issue tonight.
No, I understand. I'm just
Okay.
trying to get my head around what
Okay.
is happening there. So the two that are splitting the property line, then, those are privately owned. Those aren't city homes.
These are city-owned. They're basically city maintenance sheds.
Mm-hmm.
These are privately owned.
Okay, those two there.
Yes, these two and all of these here also.
Got it, okay.
So if I can ask, Mayor,
Please.
those, I'm assuming those are permanent structures? It's not something that's easily moved? Okay.
This one may be more easily
I'm sorry,
moved
the
to
two
get-
that we're discussing tonight for this.
Oh. Actually, I'm not sure. We might want to ask the property owner.
Okay.
I believe they're horse sheds and horse corrals and those kind of things. Mr. Mayor, I do apologize. Councilwoman Althouse, to answer your question, this is just a maintenance shed. This is kind of a rock yard area that's been used, near as we can tell, at least since 1984.
And the two buildings that are circled in red, that's what we're talking about? Or
Actually,
the two structures?
actually, the area we're talking about is right over here.
The other two.
Yes.
So why is that, what is that red area then? Why is it red?
That's the area of the private cemetery that also had the exact same situation, where their property line was 28 feet north of this fence. That, I'm not sure, but I believe this property owner has already worked out with this private cemetery company. And again, we can ask her that question. But, so this was private property both ways.
And looking at the history of what happened.
I'm guessing either a survey wasn't completed when the fence went up, or the survey was inaccurate.
Are the buildings that are they're splitting the property line there, were they permitted? Or would we have a record if they were permitted?
From 1984, I know I've checked, and we don't know of a permit in our city files.
Okay,
But it's not uncommon that our files don't go back that far.
right, okay. Do we have any more questions from city staff?
I'd like to hear from the citizens.
Yeah.
Me too. That's what I was gonna say. I'd like to hear from the property owner what's there.
And are you Miss Masters? Come on up. Okay. If you could, ma'am, if you could just speak into the mic so we can pick you up. Thanks for being here tonight.
I've got some pictures so you can see, it's really I recently bought it, and it's my driveway, and it goes all the way back, and then it goes into where the mule corral is. And, I mean, I thought it was my property when I bought it, because I don't even know how you get into the property because there's a drainage easement, so you really couldn't go any other way but this way into the property. So if I could, yeah, that'd be great. So
And-
you can see.
You say you just recently purchased the property?
Over a year.
Okay.
It's over a year, but I had no idea that there was anything wrong until I went over to see if I could put some of the material fencing so I didn't have to see the cemetery, and he said, by the way. So he told me that they were doing that, and there was a problem.
It was not surveyed? You didn't have it surveyed when you purchased the
No,
property?
I didn't.
Okay.
I didn't think about it,
Okay.
because it was city. I figured it didn't have to worry about it.
And so what are the structures then that are splitting that property line?
It looks like it's really close to, and I'm not exactly sure, it looks like it's touching the carport. And then the other one is like a real old storage shed. And then there was a building on there that I had removed because it was so old that it was just kind of crumbling. And the part of the back there, I've already worked that out with the Aztec-y person. She did a quick claim with me. I had an attorney, and they got that worked out. So I already have that part of the property that I thought was mine in the first place, so that's already been taken care of.
And that's the white roofed structure there that's also splitting a property line?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
What's the building that's further north? The larger structure? Is that a home?
That's the house.
That's the home. And that's the one that you've just recently had corrected? So that's now on your property?
No, the part that's now on my property is the little ones up front, in the red. Yep, kind of. Yeah, that's the part that was the cemetery stuff, right?
Is this a trailer?
Yeah, that's a trailer.
This is the trailer, this is the house. So trailer, is this a shed?
It's just a cloth kind of thing. It's not permanent.
And this one?
That one was the one that I had removed because it was falling down.
But your home, it looks like is also straddling a property line, or not? Am I confused?
Well, there's the ditch. The ditch is right there, so it's, there's nothing behind there but
Mr. Mayor, just, the county GIS lines are not perfect. In fact, that's why we had to have it surveyed. So
Okay.
I don't know if the home is straddling property line or not, but it wouldn't be uncommon for the county GIS lines not to be perfect.
It's not, that's somebody else's property there.
In fact, this side of the property is Riverfront Park.
Yeah. That's Riverfront Park, so it is city-owned property.
That's correct. But this line may not be. In fact, this
Got it.
line is probably much closer to the irrigation ditch.
Interesting. What a strange situation you found yourself in. Okay. Any other questions for the homeowner, property owner? No? Does staff have any recommendation on this for council to consider? Has this come up before in the past?
Not that I know of.
Not exactly, but I don't know of a property line we have that is perfect.
Especially when you start getting into the older neighborhoods and.
Sure. I mean, is there any precedent to follow at all? I mean, are we legally bound to do something?
No. But do you have options? Yes. There's a, sorry, Mark.
No, please do.
There is a statutory process that could work, and the city may sell or convey its real or personal property after providing notice and accepting bids. There is, and as the council will recall, with the old rec center, the sole criteria for selling real property doesn't necessarily have to be low price. So the city would have to go through the bidding process, but it would be able to make a decision about who to sell to based on things other than price. What I would recommend you do before authorizing a bid to be published is to get an appraisal and see what we're looking at. And then the council could make an informed decision if it wants to go in this direction about who to sell it to.
So we're legally required to sell the property. We cannot give the property.
Correct.
Okay.
The only, you can abandon an easement, you can't give real property.
And this is not an easement, this is real
Correct.
property. Okay.
I think that's important for the property owner to note. That's not an option available to us, which is why we need to get the property appraised before we talk about what we can do after that. That legally, we just can't say, you know, it's been there for years and let's just abandon it and give it to you. Our hands are tied. So we have to go through this other process, okay?
And you're not legally required, I'm sorry, you're not legally required to get it appraised.
Right,
But it would
but-
seem that in order for you to make an informed decision, assuming there seems to be one party who would be interested and who would be the appropriate purchaser, but in order to know what a fair purchase price is, I think an appraisal is the only way to arrive at that.
And in selling that property, we're not, it really has no value, no use to the city, correct? I mean, it's been used by somebody else for a number of years, and we don't have any plans to do a cemetery expansion for that 25-foot, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
That's correct. We don't have any plans for expansion. Obviously, that's entirely up to the council. Yeah, because I do think that is the first question is, do you want to get rid of the property? And then the second question is, how?
Mm-hmm.
And I do have a question for Steve and for the council, if you don't mind. If there is a way around the appraisal, there's a chance that this property is going to be less than the cost to get the appraisal. The appraisal is going to cost us, I assume, about $1,000, and this property may not go for that. So I don't know if we're legally required to do that, or
No, council isn't. That would be the council's call.
And is it feasible, I mean, I don't think we want to expand the cemetery, but what would that entail? We'd have to move the fence and probably do other work, is that correct?
yes, it would be moving the fence, obviously clearing the area that's been used by a private property for some amount of time. And obviously go through the council for that direction.
And Steve, can you educate me on adverse possession? As we are a public entity,
Can't-
are we immune?
You can't
from-
adverse possess against the government in Arizona. And I'm sorry, there's just one other consideration. When we talk about the appraisal and the fact, the practical effect of spending more on the appraisal than maybe the property is worth, we have to, in order to make sure we don't have a gift clause problem, we need to get something that approximates its reasonable value. The council's entitled to make a determination what it believes is reasonable, but the only objective basis, the objective framework would be a professional appraiser, unless there have been some recent sales of property similar size. It's hard for me to conceive of how you would do it, really properly without an appraisal, even though the cost may not seem proportional to the service it provides.
I think we would have a lot more expense in moving the structures, trying to reclaim the property. I don't see any real use or value to that property for the city or the citizens at this point. It makes sense that it would be offered for sale to the adjacent property owner since they currently occupy it. But I'm not comfortable putting a price to it now without having looked at comparable land values and coming up with some determination. I would trust staff with that. If we could do that in-house, I think we would probably spend more on the appraiser than it is worth. Is that something that we can ask staff to do, or?
Yes. Mayor,
okay.
I think so.
And that would
if
hold
we're
water?
talking about $1,000 worth of property, yeah, I don't see any legal problem with doing that.
Okay. Does that seem like a decent direction to go with this?
Right, or even maybe somebody on our planning and zoning, commission, we have some expertise there, don't we? To assist staff in looking at possibilities, I don't know, but.
Right.
I'm just thinking out loud here, maybe assessed valuations is a place staff could look of nearby parcels and do some kind of calculation, takeoff based on acreage, square footage.
And we've just recently had completed not several, but more than 3 or 4 appraisals on vacant property. So
okay.
we can use those as well to come up with an idea of what the square footage value would be.
Okay. And then this could be presented at a future council meeting and we get this thing.
If that's the council's desire, we can certainly come back with an appraisal, a staff appraisal of what the value is.
Ms. Masters, would you like to address the council? If you could, you'll need to stand up to the podium again and speak into the microphone.
Yeah, I guess I'm glad to hear that you're willing to do that for me. And as far as with other, I'm an appraiser, so I just thought I'd throw that out there. I've been flag staff, I've been doing it for over 20 years. So, but also this parcel, you can't do anything with it.
Right.
You can't build on it, you can't do anything, so it's really doesn't have any value to anybody. So I just wanted, but me.
Right.
So I just wanted, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, the council, the direction could be not necessarily to come back to you just with the value. You could direct staff to come up with a value and also notice the bid, publish the bid, and then come back to you with the information and the bids, if any, received, and then a recommendation maybe for decision.
Certainly.
Agree.
That'd be more efficient.
Okay. Very good.
We can do that.
Okay. Then I would move to direct staff to come up with an appraised value of the property and put out a public notice
Invitation for bids?
Invitation for bids. Thank you.
Does that have to be a motion or just
No.
a direction?
Direction's fine.
Just direction? Okay, great. All right. Thank you. Okay, so next up is the agreement for the interconnection of the Riverfront Reclamation Plant solar photovoltaic system to the APS electrical distribution system.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Robert Winnicke, City Engineer. I'm here tonight to ask you to help us get some direction to move forward on getting our photovoltaic array at Riverfront turned on. We had to negotiate through a lengthy process with APS to go ahead and get an agreement that was acceptable to both parties so we can go ahead and use the solar generation and actually utilize it on site. Right now the site is there, we have it all ready to hook up, but we can't get a green tag from EPS until we have an agreement. So Steve Horton has worked on that with APS's attorneys, and we have the form that you have in the packet. And the only thing we're waiting on internally would be the risk assessment from our insurer. And we're waiting to hear back to find out that they're good with that. And hopefully we can get all that wrapped up, and then I'm seeking to have approval to go ahead and either have the city engineer or the utilities director sign that.
Oh, would you mind turning the lights on so we can really get a good look at you?
Yeah, that works.
I noticed the agreement's only 17 pages long, so do you feel like it's good enough?
It's pretty, yeah.
I don't see any reason why we wouldn't approve it.
Questions? May I make a motion?
Please.
All right. I move to approve the proposed interconnection agreement with APS and authorize the city engineer and/or utilities director to execute the agreement on behalf of the city.
Second.
Okay, Vice Mayor Allen made the motion, and Councilmember Althouse, was it? Seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, last up is dedication of easements on a parcel of city-owned property located near the intersection of 89A and 6th Street, prior offering the parcel for sale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I do apologize. I just realized that I probably jumped to a few conclusions. The council hasn't given us direction to offer this property for sale yet, but in preparation for that discussion, if the council does want to offer it for sale, we should probably look at reserving a few easements across this property. And in order to get the legal descriptions for those easements, it's going to cost us somewhere between, $600 and $1,000 to get those done. So obviously we wanted to bring it to you first before expending that money, and bring it to you first to see if this is something you're interested in doing. If the council chooses to move forward with selling this property, I would suggest we look at maintaining an area for a regional detention pond, a 75 by 75 in the corner. Oh, and I apologize, I'll back up and explain to everyone where we're at.
Yeah.
So 6th Street's right here, just off the picture. This is an amazing sketch. I did that in 2nd grade, so 2nd grade quality. If you want higher quality, that's what we have to pay the surveyor $600 for. So 6th Street's right here, 89A right here. You have 7th Street, Bedrock area, all right in here. The slag pile's about here, just so we're all in about the same area. There is a wash running right through this area right here that has caused flooding issues among multiple buildings in this area. So although we don't have, and that's one of the issues that came up to the council a few months ago in the drainage, when we discussed drainage projects, although we don't have planned budget right now to construct this, I'd like to suggest that we reserve a 75 by 75 area in order to construct that regional detention pond in the future. The way we would write that easement is actually that the potential buyer of the property could abandon the easement if they accomplished all the same purposes. For example, sometimes you can do detention in your parking lot. It doesn't have to be necessarily confined to a defined geographical area. It can be spread out. So we wrote that easement within, or I would write that easement within the easement that would come back to council. If we want that pond, we should get an ingress-egress easement. I wrote it just along the south property line of this parcel, but I also wrote that could be relocated. For example, if this is a parking lot, it could easily be relocated to the center of a parking lot. So we're trying to be as flexible as possible so the council gets the majority of money that we can get should you move forward with selling this property. So the more flexible we can be, I think the less impact it will impact the value of the property. Mm-hmm. Also, as you know, this is near a corner of 6th Street and 89A. I would suggest we maintain that right-of-way, just a small triangle of right-of-way. How much? I apologize, I don't know. I just feel like it's safer now to reserve a little bit more than need to go back and get it. So I've suggested a 35 by 35 triangle right through here. And again, that was a swag factor. I know, as opposed to doing an engineering traffic study for this, we just said, should we retain some amount of right-of-way in that area? Also, a sidewalk easement, because we are getting ready to reconstruct 6th Street in the next couple of years. We actually have federal funds in federal year 2021. So just in case we do need to expand, I would suggest a 5-foot sidewalk easement along this side. And then finally, it's what they call a non-vehicular access easement. It basically restricts driveways from going too close to an intersection. So this whole property is about 350 feet long. I would suggest about a 300-foot non-vehicular access easement. It's only 1 foot wide. It basically says they cannot put a driveway in that in that area, it would have to go back in this area. None of those should impact the value of the property substantially, especially since they're fairly flexible. And I feel like that's the best way if we do end up selling the property, to not have any egg on our face, as opposed to coming back to them in a few years saying, oh yeah, we probably should have kept that. So I do realize there's a lot of easements on the parcel, but as you can see, it leaves the majority of the parcel developable.
Can you clarify your statement earlier that we hadn't discussed the sale of this parcel? Correct me if I'm wrong, I thought we had put this on the list of city-owned properties that we were going to sell. It was one of the larger properties. Am I mistaken?
Yes, you're correct. I do apologize. I think we're taking the whole list back to the council soon to say what properties do you want to sell and how and when. So I didn't want to assume the council was going to sell this property, although we're making preparations for that per the council's direction.
Okay, so it was on that first list that we'd said, let's explore the viability of selling?
Yes, ma'am.
I just had a question about the drainage, because the other easements seem reasonable, especially with the extra explanation to what's in the package. But with regard to drainage, wouldn't the need for the detention pond and/or an egress easement be addressed as part of the permitting stage, depending on what the developer or whomever plans to do with the property?
That is correct. The development of this property, they would have to have their own detention for increased surface area that they're putting in. But if we have a drainage problem today without that development, so we may need a detention pond even if this property wasn't to develop because of the downstream flooding issues. So that's why that detention pond and meter would actually have to be larger than just what the private development would put in. Does that?
It answers the question, but of all the easement this one seems to impact or be the most likely to impact value. It looks like it's the most usable land and the most, with that ingress egress, the most intrusive. So my concern is if they come back to the city with a plan that adequately addresses our drainage concerns, we would then be lifting that easement, correct?
That's correct.
So I'm almost the other ones sound great, the sidewalk and the ingress and egress, but it almost seems as though we may be making more work for ourselves now with the drainage easement.
Yes, the only reason we'd ever want that is if we did want to go back to fix those downstream flooding issues. Because again, the development of this property wouldn't need to fix the downstream flooding issues that exist prior to them. They would just need to make sure it's not any worse.
But what was this property as far as the priority of the drainage projects? It was, if I remember, really far down the road.
Not in the top 10, yes.
So we wouldn't be looking at doing that for the next 10, 20 years?
That's correct.
And we think, this is prime real estate, from my perspective. It's very visible.
Yep.
It's a great 4th of July fireworks watching location. I know it's popular out there, but I could see it getting scooped up fairly quickly, and hopefully a private developer developing it more quickly than our 10 to 20 year plan for the drainage.
Yes, that's correct.
That's just my one concern about that one.
No,
I don't think it hurts to put it in, though, and see what, somebody who wants to buy it, that they have the option, and we have the option of releasing it.
If the council would like, we can insert language saying a future council has the right to revoke it or abandon it, which of course you have the right to do that anyways. We could just make it clear to the buyer that if they could accomplish the intent otherwise, they would be welcome to. They wouldn't have to confine it to that 75 by 75 foot area. Because I agree, a 75 by 75 foot area on commercial real estate, that's a chunk of change.
I'd be fine with a compromise as long as we do communicate. So they're not looking at this property going, wow, so long as I would be comfortable if it were clear that we will work with you if you come up with something that will address the drainage concerns. So we're not overly limiting and burdening that corner there.
I think it's wise, though, that now that we do own the property, to think forward and realize, we talked about the regional detention basins, and here's kind of an opportunity to make that happen while we still own it. But I would agree that developer might have a better way to accomplish that. So I think letting them know that whatever ideas you come to the table with are fine, and then we can release the 75 by 75, but with the understanding that they're also solving an issue that's not just generated from their property alone, but more of a regional issue.
That's correct. Yeah. So we can write it in that way and bring it back to the council.
Would council like to have this come back to us for final approval?
I don't need to see it, Morgan.
I do have a question though, because the way this is written tonight, as we know, it says here, prior to the offering of the parcel for sale. Now that says that the consent has already been given by the council to sell this property. So by voting on this tonight, are we doing that inadvertently? Is giving that, or do we have to rewrite this and bring it back?
Two parts to that question. So either way, we'd actually have to bring this back to the council because we'd have the easements actually written up and the easements themselves approved, and the mayor would be signing as both the grantor and the grantee. So that would have to come back to the council. But then we're also bringing everything on the list of parcels back to the council as for sale.
But this is directional. This isn't, there's no motion here. We're just giving direction.
Okay.
That's correct.
So I'm sorry, the short answer is no. You're not authorizing the sale of the property by authorizing the staff to prepare the easement.
Okay. So it'll come back to us when all the easements are prepared and, okay.
That's correct.
Very good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That settles that.
Can I make a motion to pay the claims?
Sure.
Move to pay the claims?
I'll second that. Vice Mayor made the motion, Mayor seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Councilmember Henry made the motion and Councilmember Norman seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.